Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to this special edition of Africa Today, where we are covering the current visit of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to Paris, where he is going to be attending a conference to support the transitional period in Sudan and a summit on financing African economies. And now we're going to be moving on to our special reports. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrived on Sunday in France to participate in the Paris conference to support the transition in Sudan and the summit on financing African economies. More details in this report.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi visited the French capital to attend the Paris conference for supporting Sudan's transitional period and the Funding African Economy Summit held on May 17th and 18th respectively. The president is attending upon an invitation by his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, in alignment with the close ties between both countries and the vital Egyptian role in backing the transitional phase in neighboring Sudan on both the international and regional scales. As for the other conference, the president will highlight different matters that concern African countries, mainly the importance of bolstering international efforts to facilitate their integration to the global economy that would contribute to achieving economic growth in face of the implications of COVID-19 crisis, as well as facilitating technology transfer and expanding foreign direct investment. President el-Sisi will also hold bilateral talks with President Macron to examine cooperation over the past years and carry out coordination and consultation over regional and international affairs of mutual interest. The president will also hold meetings with a number of French officials and heads of French global companies to examine ways of pushing forward economic cooperation, trade and investment with Egypt. Moreover, President el-Sisi will meet with a number of heads of state who will take part in the conference, and that is to confer over bilateral cooperation frameworks and consultation over different regional and international issues.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi meets with world leaders.
أعبر لكم عن خالص الشكر والتقدير على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة.
Reaffirming Egypt's vision, delivering our voice abroad.
لتطوير التعاون الثنائي الاقتصادي والعسكري إلى مستويات غير مسبوقة.
Discussing regional and international developments. Solid and strong relations on the path of partnership and development.
Welcome back, dear viewers, and still with our coverage of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's current visit to Paris. And on this topic, we're glad to be joined over the phone by Dr. Farouk Ghaffar. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, my dear. It is Raouf, not Farouk. Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political analyst. Hello, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. Raouf, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is in a current visit to Paris, and he will be attending a conference to support the transition period in Sudan and a summit on financing African economies. How do you see the significance of this visit, sir?
It is a very important visit, particularly the destination. I mean, he went to France, and we know that France has distance in Africa, has always been concerned with the Africa and with the welfare of Africa. And it was always there in all the crises, helping, solving, establishing peace, security all over the continent. So the choice of France as a meeting place, of course, France is, again, a very important member in the European Union. And if France adopts a certain policy, normally it represents the policy of the European Union. So this visit, I mean, I'm putting the bilateral relation aside. I mean, of course, he will discuss a bilateral relation between France and Egypt, but the two important meetings that we will have, the summit meeting with the head of Sudan, and the meeting regarding the development of Sudan and how to help towards achieving this goal. We know Sudan is a very important regional state, and the security and the development and the welfare of Sudan is very important for the area. And just to urge the international community and the European and France to help out in the future of Sudan and in the development of Sudan and the improvement of the economic conditions in Sudan, etc., is something of extreme importance, not only for Sudan, but for the whole area, and even for the other party, which is France and the other European community. So the meeting is of extreme importance, and I am sure will result in so many good things for Sudan in particular and for the area in general.
Right. Dr. Raouf, President Sisi held summit talks with the French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday. The talks covered regional and international issues of mutual concern, as well as means of boosting bilateral relations. How do you see the significance of this meeting, sir?
If we notice over the last months and even years, the nearing and the rapprochement between Egypt and France in particular. And we have seen that now France is becoming one of the most important suppliers of military equipment to Egypt, is becoming an important partner of Egypt in so many different areas. Our president was just a few months ago in an official visit to France. I mean, these kinds of continuous talks, applications, and exchange of views with such an important European power like France is extremely important for Egypt as well as France. As I said, they have almost coinciding points of view regarding the regional issues, particularly if we mention the Libyan issue, for instance. Now that the Lebanese issue again is almost identical between Egypt and France, and other regional and African issues, again, the points of view are very neat. So
right,
it is important to discuss, to talk, and particularly on the bilateral relation, I can see that the near future will see a lot of development in so many fields between Egypt and France.
Right. Well, Dr. Raouf, the two leaders, President Macron and President Sisi, discussed the latest developments in the Palestinian territories and the latest escalation of aggression by the Israeli occupation forces. How do you see the significance of this topic?
It is important. I mean, Egypt has always been behind the Palestinian people toward reaching just settlement for their long-lasting. I'm sure President Macron and French administration is adopting the same ideas and policies. They all want to see just settlement for the Palestinian crisis. We are all, with no exceptions, very few exceptions if I may, about what is happening, about the atrocious and the severe confrontation happening between Gaza Strip from one side and Israel from the other. And we feel that the action of Israel is a little bit exaggerated, and
Yes.
it should not have reached that level of really ferocity. I mean, we have seen violence, very, very, very high violence, and the aggression is very, disturbing. And it is important to have a consensus from Europe and other parts of the world adopting, as I say, the idea of reaching a settlement and stopping the aggressions and atrocities between the two sides. And now that France, being, again, we have to mention, a permanent member in the Security Council, which means it has a saying in the international community. So having such an issue discussed in the United Nations with the backing of France, it will certainly give it more weight.
Yes, well, sir, also the talks between the two leaders covered funding development projects in Africa as well as efforts to combat terrorism. How significant are these two topics?
Terrorism goes without saying. I mean, nobody likes terrorism, nobody's happy about terrorism. Thank God it has needed a lot lately, but again, this is a war that has to be continued until all the roots are completely eradicated as far as terrorism is. So this is something that is always brought as an issue in any talks and in any negotiations as a very important issue that has to come to an end, hopefully very soon. As far as Africa is concerned, we all know how much Africa suffered from the repercussions of the COVID-19 due to the fact that, of course, the economies of most of the African countries is very fragile. Most of the African countries are not rich, so they have suffered a lot. So the idea of going, talking on behalf of Africa, of course, Egypt has a responsibility toward Africa, and being one of the leading states in Africa, one of the largest and most important countries in Africa, has a responsibility. So being there, just to ask France, Europe, and the international community to give a hand and help Africa overcome crisis, maybe by forgiving some of the loans or giving more grants, according loans with low interest and on long-term basis to develop the continent and to help overcome the pandemic and start sort of reforming the economy in Africa and improving the economy in Africa is a great move, in my opinion, and it is very important. And I am sure that one is very optimistic that the response will be positive, and France with Egypt play a role in addressing the international community to give all the help they can to Africa in order to improve and for the welfare of the continent.
Right. Dr. Raouf, upon his arrival in Paris, President Sisi also met with the head of the Sudanese Transition Sovereign Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. How do you see the significance of this meeting?
First of all, it's a message to the international community that Egypt and Sudan are the same. I mean, they are together, they have the same views, they are one cut, adopting the same policy towards Africa, towards the, of course, the famous barrage, Renaissance barrage. So, I mean, it shows to the world that we are here, we are together, we share the same destiny, And our concern toward water and the barrage crisis is identical, and we seek the backing of the international community and the European community in our cause. And the fact that both heads of state, the head of the transitional government, together with our president, met in Paris, again, this is a message of solidarity that Egypt gives to Sudan, and shows to the whole world that we are backing and we are agreeing with the development of Sudan from one side, and we share, as I say, the same interests as far as the water crisis is concerned.
Yes, also President Sisi affirmed Egypt's commitment to support all steps taken by Sudan to achieve stability and development in Sudan. How do you see this, sir?
Absolutely. I mean, Egypt was always there, helping Sudan, establishing stability and security all over and mind you, north and south of Sudan. And this is normal. Sudan is, I cannot even say it is the extension of our national security, but it is an integral part of the national security of Egypt. And helping, not the word, it is complete assistance and backing for our Sudanese brothers and sisters. We love to see a united north of Sudan, very much secured, very much in peace, and this is what will happen. And mind you, peace is the foundation for any development. Without peace and security, no development can be achieved. So once this, we are very close to it anyway. But once this is there, I'm sure that Sudan has enough resources to start a very strong comeback and a very strong improvement on the economic level.
Right. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political analyst. Many thanks for your insight. And dear viewers, now we go to this report on French-Egyptian relations and the economic cooperation between the two countries.
Ties of friendship and cooperation that developed considerably in all areas and domains over the last few years. Despite the regional and international changes, relations between the two countries remain firmly established as they are based on historical and cultural ties and mutual confidence. High-level bilateral meetings have increased considerably, with visits at the highest level of heads of state on an almost yearly basis. President Fattah el-Sisi has visited France from the 6th to the 9th of December last year to discuss matters of mutual concern, joint cooperation, and the growing crises in the Middle East. That was the fourth visit of President Fattah el-Sisi to Paris since 2014. During the visit, President Fattah el-Sisi and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron tackled a host of regional issues, notably the Libyan crisis, combating terrorism, the escalating tension in the Eastern Mediterranean, the Palestinian cause, and the political crisis in Lebanon. France is one of the most important European countries that played a prominent role as an effective power in dealing with the challenges in the region by adopting mediation efforts between the disputing parties. The French role in the region comes in accordance with the principles of Egyptian foreign policy, which is based on a number of determinants, topped by non-interference in preserving the unity of the national sovereignty of the countries in the region. All these elements led to the development of Egyptian-French relations, which is reflected in the convergence of their positions on many issues. Earlier this month, President Fattah el-Sisi has met with France's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jean-Yves Le Drian, in Cairo. The meeting tackled bilateral cooperation between Egypt and France, especially in the economic, commercial, military, and security fields. They have also discussed issues of common interest, including regional issues of Eastern Mediterranean and the African continent. Le Drian expressed France's appreciation for the Egyptian efforts aimed at achieving stability in the region. The two sides agreed to join efforts to consolidate the political path in order to address all aspects of the Libyan crisis. These efforts are also aimed at eliminating terrorism, preserving the state's resources and national institutions, and limiting foreign interference. They also discussed ways to enhance cooperation between Egypt and France in the field of combating terrorism and extremist ideology, especially in Africa's Sahel region. On the economic level, France is a leading economic partner for Egypt. Minister of International Cooperation Rania Al-Mashat has met with France's ambassador to Egypt earlier this month to discuss methods of enhancing bilateral cooperation. During the meeting, they discussed financing for a number of development projects as part of efforts to develop and strengthen economic relations between Egypt and France. Minister Al-Mashat praised the fruitful cooperation between the two countries as part of joint efforts to achieve the Egyptian government's development priorities. This has also seen support provided for efforts to achieve sustainable development, which has resulted in many agreements in vital areas such as transport, energy, agriculture, small and medium-sized enterprises, health, and antiquities. French companies have strong positions in key sectors of the Egyptian economy, such as industry, agri-food, electrical equipment, pharmaceuticals, retail, hydrocarbon exploitation, tourism, and infrastructure. There are other partnership agreements between the Egyptian and French governments that will see a technical cooperation project implemented to support the teaching of the French language in public schools. This is set to receive a grant of 1.5 million euros for its implementation. On the military level, several major export contracts have been concluded as the sales of 4 corvettes by DCNS May 2014, 24 Rafale fighter aircraft, a multi-mission frigate by DCNS, and weapon systems by MBDA February 2015. In October 2015, Egypt also purchased the 2 Mistral-class force projection and command vessels built by DCNS. On the 4th of May 2021, Egypt has signed a contract with the French aviation company to purchase 30 Rafale jet fights. The order will be financed through a 10-year loan. The new Rafale deal reinforces the strategic and military partnership between France and Egypt. The contract illustrates the strategic nature of the partnership that Egypt maintains with France, while both countries are committed to the fight against terrorism and are working for stability and security.
Welcome back, dear viewers, and still continuing our coverage of President Sisi's current visit to Paris to attend a conference to support the transitional period in Sudan and the summit on financing African economies. And on this topic, we're glad to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant to the foreign minister. Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador.
Good afternoon, madam.
Ambassador Haridi, President Sisi is in a current visit to Paris to attend the conference to support the transitional period in Sudan and a summit on financing African economies. How would you see the significance of this visit and the timing of the visit, sir?
Well, I guess, of course, the 2 topics, whether the support for the transitional period in Sudan or financing African economies after the pandemic of COVID-19, these 2 summits are significant and important, not only from an African point of view, but also from an Egyptian point of view. As far as the first summit is concerned, of course, Egypt has a great interest in international support to the transition period in Sudan. Whether politically or economically. As far as the second summit is concerned, the Egyptian economy is the second or the 3rd largest African economy. Yes. And as other African economies, the Egyptian economy has suffered from the consequences of the pandemic. So we being a leading African economy, and being a country, an African country that has borne the negative consequences of the pandemic, of course, our presence and our participation in the second summit is important. And of course, it will be an opportunity for Egypt to explain where it stands on the financial needs of Africa this year and a few years to come.
Yes. President Sisi met with Eric Trappé, the CEO of Dassault Aviation, the maker of Rafale jet fighters. How do you see the significance of this meeting, sir?
Well, the relations between Egypt and Dassault, the well-known maker of fighter planes in France. Of course, our relations are very good. And as you may know, madam, we've signed a second contract to provide us with 24 new Rafale fighter bombers. So this is the second deal that we signed with the French government, and Dassault is the manufacturer of the Rafale fighter bombers. Of course, it's a very important addition to the Air Force of Egypt. And of course, the meeting between President Sisi and the Chief Executive Officer of Dassault has come within this context.
Yes. Sir, President Sisi is expected to be meeting with a number of world leaders during this current visit. How do you see the significance of this visit in light of President Sisi's meetings with world leaders?
Well, in such occasions, international summits do provide heads of state with the occasion of meeting like-minded heads of state or heads of government. So, as you just said, madam, President Sisi is scheduled to meet with some of those heads of state participating either in the summit of support to the transitional period of Sudan, or the other one related to financing African economies. So I guess these meetings are usually meetings where heads of state do exchange point of view, and if they have particular points of concern, of course they raise it, they touch upon it. But all in all, I guess it's important for Egypt so the President Sisi meets with various heads of state. We have some concerns that we would like to share with other countries. Just one example, our position vis-a-vis the second filling of the Renaissance Dam, as an example.
Well, bilateral relations between Egypt and France are based on strong, long-standing ties of friendship, cooperation, and mutual interest. How do you see, how do you weigh the level of cooperation between Egypt and France?
Well, in the last, of course, as you said, madam, historically speaking, with the exception, of course, of the period of 1956, where France had waged an aggression against Egypt with Britain and Israel. With this, the only exception, but relations between Egypt and particularly the Fifth Republic that was established by the late General Charles de Gaulle in 1958, relations between the two countries are personally speaking, are a model of relations between a leading European power and a leading Arab power. In the last few years, we have witnessed the expansion and the strengthening of these relations in all fields, in military cooperation in fighting terrorism, particularly in the Sahel, and of course, when it comes to direct foreign investments, French direct foreign investments in Egypt I guess the figure is 5 billion euros. So this is a huge sum. And on the other hand, French companies are helping Egypt in operating the underground. Few months ago, the Egyptian Underground Authority signed a management agreement with the RATP. This is a leading government agency in mass transit in France.
Yes.
And the RATP would manage and operate, I guess, for a period of 15 years, the third line of the Great Cairo area.
Yes.
And this it's significant in the sense that this third line does serve one way or another, or you can make a connection to other transport systems going to the new administrative capital.
Yes.
So I guess relations between the two countries are excellent. And of course, these relations are based on common interests.
Yes.
And common visions concerning how to deal with a host of crisis questions and problems, be it in North Africa, in the Middle East, in the East Mediterranean, in Africa. Mm-hmm. So the participation, the kind invitation by the French President Emmanuel Macron to President Sisi to participate in the two summits do reflect the strength of the bilateral relations between Cairo and Paris.
Yes. Well, sir, President Sisi also met with head of the Sudanese Transition Government, Transition Sovereign Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. How do you see the significance of this meeting?
Well, of course, this meeting took place yesterday, and it was a way of preparing for the summit today concerning Sudan, the support for the transitional period in Sudan. And of course, it was an occasion for the two leaders to discuss a host of questions that are of mutual concern and mutual importance to the two countries, Egypt and Sudan, and among which, of course, the Renaissance Dam and the positions of the two countries on the need to work out an agreement before the second filling of the dam next July. So I guess the meeting, and of course, on the other hand, in this meeting, President Sisi gave full support to the Sudanese position that would be elaborated by the Sudanese delegation in the summit today.
Right. Well, sir, a summit on African economies will try to fill a financing shortfall of almost $300 billion caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. How do you see the significance of this issue?
Well, this is a tall order, frankly speaking, madam. Africa is the most affected continent by the pandemic of COVID-19. And the African economies are, we wouldn't say that are in the best shape ever. And the financial needs are enormous. You have just stated the figure of $300 billion. That's a huge amount of money. And if the summit of financing the African economies can come up tomorrow with ways and means of raising that amount of money, that would be a big success for French diplomacy and for the summit itself. Mm-hmm. Having said that, of course, Egypt is among the African economies that were affected by the pandemic. But fortunately, we are one of the few African countries that handled wisely the negative consequences of the pandemic on the Egyptian economy.
Right. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Many thanks for your insight.
It's my pleasure, madam. Thank you.
Our
Thank
pleasure,
you.
sir. And dear viewers, that brings us to the end of this special coverage of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's current visit to Paris, and we will be updating you minute by minute throughout of the rest of the day. Many thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more coming up here on Nile TV International.